New York just launched a massive tax crackdown. Wealthy homeowners are under investigation. Think your part-time city apartment is off the state's radar? Well, you might want to think again. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most unprecedented, intense, and honestly fascinating tax enforcement efforts we've seen in a really long time. If you follow real estate, taxes, or just how states make their money, you know the rules are always shifting. But what's happening right now in New York, it's taking things to a whole new level. We're looking at a highly coordinated tax dragnet strategy that's putting luxury homeowners under a massive microscope. We're going to break down exactly how this works, why it's happening, and what it means for the future of wealth and residency.
So picture this. Imagine owning a luxury home in New York. Maybe you just visit a few times a year for business, or maybe you just love catching a show in the theater district. Then, out of absolutely nowhere, you get an official letter in the mail. And it's not just your standard property tax bill. It's a notice that could trigger a full-blown tax investigation into where you actually physically live. Crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what's happening right now to property owners all across the state. These surprise audit letters have set off major alarm bells for homeowners and tax attorneys alike. It's turning what seemed like standard property ownership into a massive legal and financial headache. Let's dive right into Section 1, the massive tax crackdown.
Which brings us to our next section. What exactly is a pied-à-terre? Okay, to really wrap our heads around this sudden, aggressive push and how everyday property records are basically being turned into investigative tools, we've got to look at the trigger for all of this. The pied-à-terre. It translates from French as foot on the ground, and it basically means a luxury secondary or non-primary residence. Now, these are incredibly common in a huge global hub like New York City. Think about a wealthy executive whose main home is down in Florida, but they keep a multi-million-dollar Manhattan apartment just for when they're in town for meetings. For years, lawmakers have been looking at these gorgeous, often empty luxury properties and seeing a massive pool of untapped revenue. So the new pied-à-terre tax was designed specifically to capture revenue from these high-value properties that just sit vacant for a lot of the year, owned by people who, you guessed it, don't pay local income taxes. But as you'll see, the execution of this tax has been anything but smooth. Actually, the initial rollout was famously botched. The system that was supposed to target out-of-state owners accidentally sent notices to thousands of full-time New York residents. Can you imagine the panic? You live in your home year-round, you pay all your local income taxes, and suddenly you get a notice treating you like an out-of-state resident hoarding a luxury pied-à-terre? It caused widespread confusion and, honestly, deep frustration across the city. The backlash was so intense that government officials were forced to step in and officially extend the exemption deadline. They were basically scrambling to fix their own administrative error before it trapped the wrong people.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the 1840-day residency rule. So the core of this whole issue really comes down to recent residency rule changes. On paper, the rule sounds incredibly simple. If you spend 184 days or more in New York during a calendar year, you are legally considered a statutory resident for tax purposes. That's it. It doesn't matter if your driver's license says Florida. It doesn't matter if you're registered to vote in Pennsylvania. If your foot is physically on New York ground for 184 days, and guys, even for a single minute of those days, you owe New York state and city income taxes on all of your global income. Understanding these residency rule changes is absolutely crucial, because crossing that 184-day mark completely flips your financial reality upside down. And this brings us to the massive financial incentive behind the scenes. On one side, you have high-tax environments like New York. On the other side, you've got low or even zero income tax environments like Florida or Pennsylvania. So for a wealthy individual, legally claiming residency in Florida instead of New York can literally save them millions of dollars a year in state income taxes. The financial motivation to claim you're an out-of-state resident is just astronomical. But here's the thing. New York knows this, and they are totally tired of watching all that potential revenue fly south for the winter. Let's get into Section 4, the dragnet strategy explained. Okay, so here is exactly how the state's new tax dragnet strategy snaps shut. It's a really sophisticated three-step process initiated by Governor Kathy Hochul's administration. First up, the state identifies the pied-à-terre owners. These are the folks who actively admit they own a secondary luxury home in New York. Second, they cross-reference that list with state income tax filings to see who is claiming out-of-state residency. And third, well, if you claim to live in Florida but you own a multi-million-dollar apartment in Manhattan, you are now flagged. The state launches a tax audit to find out exactly how many days you actually spent in that New York apartment. They're basically using the property tax data as a treasure map to hunt down income tax evaders. It's a brilliant and highly aggressive approach. Now, if you do get flagged for an audit, the verification process is incredibly invasive. Tax investigators don't just, take your word for it. No way. They will subpoena your cell phone location records to ping exactly which cell towers your phone connected to on any given day. They will track your credit card swipes. Did you buy a latte in Manhattan on a random Tuesday in November? They'll know. They pull your flight and travel logs, Easy Pass toll records, and even your building key fob data. It's wild. If you claimed you were in Florida but your digital footprint shows you were in New York for 184 days, they are going to catch you. And if they do catch you, the results are pretty devastating. Severe financial consequences and massive back taxes are waiting for anyone found filing incorrect residency claims. You wouldn't just owe the taxes you skipped, you'd owe heavy penalties, interest, and you could even face some serious legal repercussions. The state is expecting to generate some major revenue from this enforcement. They're essentially funding public projects by catching millionaires in a web of their own digital footprints. Which leads us to Section 5, Fair Share or Overreach. As you might expect, an enforcement effort of this magnitude sparks a really fierce debate. On one side of the aisle, you've got the policy supporters, and their perspective is pretty simple. Everyone needs to pay their fair share. For years, lawmakers and advocates have been pushing for this. They argue that wealthy individuals shouldn't be allowed to enjoy all the economic and cultural benefits of New York City while using accounting loopholes to avoid paying the taxes that actually fund the city's infrastructure, schools, and services. So to them, this tax dragnet strategy isn't punitive at all. It's just a necessary step for basic economic fairness and some long overdue revenue generation. But while supporters see fairness, critics see something entirely different. Tax attorneys and experts argue this is turning into a residency dragnet, not just a property tax. Critics make the case that what was sold to the public as just a simple tax on vacant luxury properties has basically been weaponized by the government into an invasive surveillance tool. They view this as extreme government overreach. They worry it creates a hostile environment for real estate investment because it essentially assumes every out-of-state property owner is guilty of tax evasion until they can prove their innocence through their own credit card swipes and toll records. And finally, Section 6, the future of wealth taxes. State governments all across the country are watching this rollout very, very closely. And that leaves us with a massive question to ponder. Will this aggressive policy fundamentally change where wealthy Americans choose to live and invest their money? I mean, if owning a secondary home in New York guarantees a forensic audit of your digital life, will buyers just decide to purchase in Miami or Austin instead? Furthermore, if New York actually succeeds in clawing back millions in revenue using this data sharing strategy, how long is it going to take before states like California, Illinois, or Massachusetts copy this exact same playbook? So, what do you think? Is this really about economic fairness, or is it just the newest frontier in state revenue collection? It's a fascinating dynamic, and it's definitely going to shape the luxury real estate market for years to come. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped clarify exactly what is going on behind the headlines.